The sea needs us, just as we need the sea. Good evening. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. 70% of the oxygen going into your lungs comes from the sea. This oxygen is produced by billions of microscopic algae living on the ocean's surface. When astronauts saw the Earth from space for the first time, they were surprised to find it so blue. But this is normal, given that the sea covers 72% of our planet's surface. The sea's resources may seem inexhaustible to us, but they are not. It's being emptied of its fish, being treated like a waste bin. The damage we are inflicting on the sea will be irreversible if we don't act now. This is an emergency. We are reaching the point of no return. During this program, I will take you on a magnificent, but as you'll come to understand, also worrying journey. We are in Corsica, in a Genoese tower. There are 90 towers like this built to protect the island from invasion. Due to its overseas territories, France has the world's second largest maritime force, just behind the United States, which is why we decided to film this program in France. We have started here because I believe Corsica has the most beautiful and well-protected coastline in Europe. But the trip you are about to take will take you around the world, because the problem with the sea is global. Look.
In the Galapagos, a portrait of Paul Watson. For 40 years, this Canadian and hero of the protection of marine species has not stopped battling.
So if you're going after pirates, it's best to be a pirate.
By pillaging the oceans, we are devastating environments we know little about. In the abyssal zone, at more than 5,000 meters below the surface, discover an amazing menagerie. 7 islands off the Brittany coast. We filmed the largest colony of seabirds in France. In this reserve, nearly 18,000 pairs of gannets have made their nest. Norway. A giant crab is devastating everything in its path. This is what happens when man disrespects the delicate balance of nature. In Brittany, on the Armour coast, green algae has invaded the beaches. Who's responsible and how to get rid of them? In New Caledonia, the coral reef is threatened by the construction of a nickel mine. And at the very moment, it's going to be entered on the Worldwide Heritage List.
Franchement, c'est quelque chose qui me fait mal au ventre parce qu'on est en train de détruire, on est en train de dénaturer ce pays.
In less than 40 years, Venice may disappear underwater. On the other hand, the Mont Saint-Michel may no longer be an island. We'll see what man is doing to protect these 2 sites, which belong to our worldwide heritage.
The intervention of man can also mean new opportunities for some species. We're just off Perros-Guirec in Brittany. This is one of the rare places in France where you can see grey seals. As the reserve is protected, many species of bird have settled here, like the gannet, which only came here in 1930. Today, this place has become the biggest bird reserve in the French Sea. So, how many birds are there here?
Alors, ce que l'on voit là, c'est des fous de bassin, et il y en a exactement cette année 18 698 couples.
How did you count them?
Alors, on les compte en faisant d'abord une photographie aérienne. Et sur ces photographies, ces oiseaux blancs apparaissent très bien comme des petits points et on compte tous ces petits points. Et donc cette année, il y en avait 18 698, sachant qu'un petit point blanc, c'est un adulte qui est posé sur son nid.
Once gannets mate, it's for life. And every year, it's the same ritual. The gannets come back to their colony around February. The male struts about. They mate, and the female lays a single egg, which she will sit on for 40 days. The young gannet hatches around June, and for the next 12 weeks, it's nursery time. The parents feed their young one, always together, always in the same place, always on the same nest. It's funny how they are, really. There really are groups. There are really numerous. That one there on the right? There's some plastic bags there on the beach.
La mer est sale, hein. Elle charrie énormément. On est dans des eaux avec 6 heures de courant dans un sens, 6 heures dans l'autre. Donc tout ce qui est jeté à la mer sur la presqu'île du Cotentin ou du côté de Brest, un jour ou l'autre, ça arrive chez nous. Et donc on a souvent les plages qui recueillent ce qu'on appelle les macro-déchets, hein, des gros sacs plastiques, des bidons.
Plastic bags are the scourge of the sea. 1 second to make them, 20 minutes use, and then 400 years to deteriorate. Every year they kill 1 million birds and 100,000 sea mammals. These seabirds are carefully studied. Every summer, new ones are caught and ringed or equipped with a GPS marker. GPS is a new tool used to follow the bird's movements. We discovered that the 7-island gannets do an average of 150 kilometers to catch fish for their little ones, a 300-kilometer return journey. In this region, there are enough fish for the colony. But in other places, such as Scotland, the birds are suffering from the lack of fish, and in some years, they die of hunger.
Ici, on a 19 000 couples, on va dire, en gros. Il va y avoir 19 000 jeunes qui vont partir là maintenant, ces jours-ci, en mer pour vivre leur aventure. Hélas, la nature est assez dure et impitoyable, très sélective. Il y en a la moitié, c'est-à-dire au moins 9 000 jeunes qui ne vont pas passer la première semaine de vie en mer autonome.
So half of the young ones here won't get through the first week.
Ils ne passeront pas la première semaine.
Exactement, parce que quand le jeune s'en va, plutôt quand il tombe de son nid parce qu'il ne sait pas voler, il arrive au bas de la falaise, il est tout seul, il débute tout seul dans la vie.
It's true, they have trouble flying.
Il pèse 1 kilo de plus que l'adulte, c'est-à-dire qu'il pèse presque 4 kilos, 4 kilos et demi.
That's not a lot.
Cette réserve en fait de graisse qui va lui permettre de faire beaucoup d'efforts pendant une semaine sans manger.
Which will allow it to learn to fly?
Pour apprendre à voler, on le voit là, il est très bas sur l'eau, il se débat, il flotte très bien, il n'y a pas de souci, mais il faut qu'il vole.
Bonne chance, mon
Well,
vieux.
good luck, old pal. And of the 50% left over after the first week, how many will come back here?
Donc la plupart des jeunes partant d'ici, une année après, vont venir s'installer sur cette île. Et très certainement, les années d'après, ils vont revenir sur le même nid chaque année. Donc une fidélité à la fois au site et à la fois entre eux, ce qui est assez remarquable.
Every time I see these rocks, I realize how lucky I am to admire these birds. Because until 1911, this archipelago was a hunting meet. People came from all over France to shoot the famous puffin, this magnificent bird. A handful of men stood up and acquired the archipelago to stop the massacre. This is how the LPO, the League for the Protection of Birds, was born. Today, there are 22,000 bird couples living here peacefully. Today, the biggest danger for these birds are oil slicks. We'll need to do a bit of background on just what these birds have undergone for the last 30 years. You'll see it's not fun. 20 major oil slicks in 40 years throughout the world. Half have hit European coastlines, and Brittany in particular. Do you remember? 1967, the Torrey Canyon, 119,000 tons of fuel, 30,000 birds polluted with oil. 1978, the Amoco Cadiz, 227,000 tons of fuel, 15 to 20,000 birds fell victim. 1999, the Erika, 20,000 tons, 77,000 birds killed. 2002, the Prestige, 77,000 tons of fuel, 13,000 birds hit on these coasts. These oil slicks revolt us, which is normal. And yet the real pollution of the sea is not that at all. The real pollution is us. Our industries, our agriculture. It's also just those everyday acts repeated millions of times. A basic machine wash, leftover paint thrown down the sink, an unauthorized oil change. It all ends up in the sea. Even in France, one of the countries best equipped in the world, the water purification plants have a very limited efficiency. 50% of the water goes into the sea without being cleaned up. I'm in the bay of Saint-Brieuc, in the middle of this sea of green algae. It's very beautiful, very green, but it smells bad. We're going to meet Gilles Huet, who's president of the Water and Rivers of Brittany Society, someone who is on the terrain, fighting against the pollution which comes as ever from the land. Every year, dozens of towns and villages confront the tides of green algae in Brittany. Tractors collect more than 50,000 tons per year, and it costs the municipalities 50,000 euros. But collecting it up doesn't stop the algae from coming back the next year. So what about this green algae?
Les algues vertes, c'est la réponse du milieu marin aux excès qui sont commis sur les terres. Sur nos terres, en Bretagne, où on a développé l'agriculture intensive depuis une trentaine d'années, on a des excès d'engrais, des excès de lisier, qui en période hivernale sont lessivés par les pluies et vont gagner les sources, les ruisseaux et le littoral. Et la mer, l'écosystème marin, va réagir en fabriquant, lui aussi, de façon excessive, des quantités impressionnantes d'algues qui vont se nourrir des nitrates qui sont transportés par les rivières. Suivant les... Trop d'engrais et trop de lisier. Chaque année, ça représente l'équivalent d'un supertanker de 150 000 tonnes de nitrates qui sont évacués par les rivières sur le littoral. Il faut diviser par 5 la pollution par les nitrates des rivières de Bretagne pour espérer stopper le phénomène des marées vertes. Et tous les efforts qui sont faits aujourd'hui, qui sont plus importants que dans d'autres régions de France et qui sont à encourager, ils sont néanmoins insuffisants par rapport à l'ampleur du problème. C'est vraiment une reconversion profonde de l'agriculture qu'il nous faut engager si on veut stopper les marées vertes en Bretagne.
Do the farmers realize what they're doing?
Et qu'est-ce qu'ils font?
Oui, il ne faut pas tirer sur les agriculteurs. Les agriculteurs, ils sont comme les consommateurs. Ce sont à la fois des complices de cette situation, mais aussi des victimes. On a la chance d'avoir en Bretagne des exploitations, des agriculteurs qui ont montré la voie. Ceux de l'agriculture durable, ceux de l'agriculture biologique. Il faut aujourd'hui un coup de pouce des pouvoirs publics pour accompagner ce développement et le généraliser.
The boost needs also to come from the people who should be prepared to buy more expensive products from the farmers, who are ecologically minded, and we're not yet ready to do that.
Si le consommateur se contente d'être un acheteur passif des produits alimentaires bas de gamme, il devra faire avec les marées vertes. La solution, elle est aussi dans le portefeuille des consommateurs. Ce sont les consommateurs, au moment de leur choix d'achat des biens alimentaires, qui doivent privilégier les produits qui sont assurés dans le respect de la protection de l'environnement, dans le respect de la qualité des produits. C'est aussi dans la main des consommateurs que réside la solution aux problèmes agricoles d'aujourd'hui.
It's always the same thing. Our responsibility, our choice. It's true that thanks to intensive farming, the French spend twice as less on food than they did in 1960. But the nitrates that come from fertilizers and animal waste have contaminated a major part of French waters. Can we carry on in this way today?
Joseph Cabaret,
you are a farmer in the Côte d'Armor. When did you become aware that your job actually involved pollution and that you had to change your way of working?
J'ai pris conscience que je polluais vraiment beaucoup, parce qu'aussi dans notre commune, on a la particularité d'avoir autant de producteurs de moules que d'agriculteurs. Et donc ces producteurs de moules avaient régulièrement des interdictions de vente de moules, par exemple. Et on avait conscience que c'était en partie à cause de nous. Comment moi je peux faire mon métier en empêchant mon voisin de faire le sien? J'ai souvent eu honte de mon métier en me promenant au bord de la mer, en voyant toutes ces algues, sachant que j'y avais une responsabilité.
Ashamed of your job.
Ah oui, ça c'est sûr, j'ai eu honte et je me suis dit, il faut absolument qu'on change, mais pas qu'on change seulement en parole, mais qu'on change réellement.
And yet being a farmer is one of the greatest jobs in the world. You feed your neighbors and the people around you, that's great.
Quand je me suis installé avec mon père a été un agriculteur qui a, aujourd'hui il a 85 ans, donc il a connu toute cette évolution de l'agriculture. Et donc, pour lui, c'était très important de produire beaucoup parce que c'est ce qu'avait demandé l'État français, tout ça. Il fallait produire pour nourrir les gens. Et donc, il était dans ce type de développement. Et moi, j'ai suivi. J'avais envie de produire vraiment pour produire le plus possible. C'était vraiment un jeu. Donc, ça suppose acheter aussi des choses à l'extérieur, justement, aller au Brésil, beaucoup de soja, beaucoup de produits chimiques et tout ça, pour cultiver beaucoup de maïs, utiliser beaucoup de pesticides, choses comme ça.
The finger is often pointed at pig breeding. Joseph took us to one of his breeder friends who received us very kindly. The main problem is the density of the animals. Often the pig farms don't have enough earth to spread over the enormous amounts of waste produced by the breeding. Today, there are systems which can reduce the nitrate content, but is it enough? Wouldn't it be better to diminish the numbers and improve the well-being of the animals at the same time? Joseph has very courageously chosen to take the right direction without waiting for us.
Et puis tout d'un coup, quand toute cette conscience de pollution est apparue, quand on a la sensation de générer quelque part un peu de la mort autour de nous, il dit il faut changer. Et aujourd'hui, on cultive essentiellement de l'herbe qui est équilibrée, on n'a pas besoin d'acheter pratiquement de soja et des choses comme ça, et du coup, on n'utilise presque plus de produits chimiques. Vous comprenez? Ça la différence.
You don't have any more animals than you are able to feed.
Exactement. On a une liaison justement au sol, c'est-à-dire que là, on a désintensifié.
Throughout the world, there are nearly 200 coastal areas that are literally being asphyxiated by algae. We call them dead areas because the algae consumes all the oxygen in the environment. The worst example is in the Baltic Sea in Northern Europe, which has thus been emptied of all life. Today, we think that 70% of maritime pollution comes from the land. We've just seen this with the green algae. But there is a living environment that is threatened, the coral reefs. These reefs represent only 1% of the ocean surface area, yet 90% of marine life depends on them.
The coral reef of New Caledonia in the South Pacific. This is the second biggest coral reef in the world after the one in Australia. These coral reefs make up some of the richest ecosystems in the world. Around 10,000 species have been recorded on the coral reefs of New Caledonia. It is a food reserve for more than 1 billion people in the world. But today, the coral is threatened, and its main enemy is man. This is Pascal Chabannet, a worldwide specialist in coral reefs. For years, this lover of the seabed has been studying reefs the world over. She knows that most of them are in danger.
Wow, c'est super! Donc tu vois, cette barrière, en fait, elle s'étale sur 1600 km tout autour de la Grande Terre. Et là-dessous, quand on ira plonger, c'est un vivier d'animaux, de végétaux, c'est extrêmement riche et c'est absolument magnifique.
Magnificent, yes, but for how much longer? For the coral is fragile. Contrary to what we might think, coral is not a rock, but a living animal that needs a preserved environment in order to survive. Around the Caledonian Reef, the water is extremely pure. Infinite varieties of coral can thus flourish easily. This is where Pascal has decided to dive.
Quand je plonge, c'est un monde difficilement descriptible, mais complètement magique. On a des coraux branchus, on a des coraux massifs, on a des coraux encroûtants, des coraux tabulaires, donc une diversité de formes assez élevée.
Coral is this animal that looks like a little flower. We call it a polypus. It reproduces several nights a year, a few days after the spring full moons. Like upside-down snow, billions of eggs float to the surface and scatter out over the reef. Once they find a favorable medium, the young polypus settles down and starts to erect the calcareous structures which build up the greater barrier reefs of coral. But the polypus cannot feed itself alone. It needs to work in association with seaweed.
Le polype a la particularité
de vivre en association avec des algues symbiotiques qu'on appelle les zooxanthelles. Et c'est cette association en fait qui va donner la force au corail de construire un squelette calcaire. Ce qui donne la couleur au corail, c'est donc en partie les zooxanthelles et aussi des pigments que le polype a dans ses tissus. Il y a vraiment une notion qui est importante à réaliser, c'est qu'un récif en bonne santé, c'est un récif qui a des couleurs.
But coral is fragile, and just a tiny variation in its environment can kill it. Following the current climate changes, the water can get abnormally warm for several weeks. Under the effect of stress, the polypus rejects the seaweed that feeds it. The coral turns white and ends up dying of hunger. This white death has hit all the coral reefs throughout the world. So far, Caledonia seems to have been spared, but for how long? But that's not all. For Pascal Chabonnet, the Caledonian coral is threatened by other dangers, and these are not so far away.
Les principales causes de dégradation des récifs coralliens sont surtout dues à l'impact de l'homme, donc et à l'augmentation de la population sur les zones littorales, qui veut dire augmentation de la population. Il y a plus d'urbanisation, il y aura plus de déchets, plus de pollution chimique.
To witness the extent of the threat, you need to fly toward the south of the island. Here we are. Up until now, this region was well preserved, but today thousands of trees have been cut down to make way for an enormous nickel mine.
Là, quand on voit de loin, on peut imaginer l'impact de l'érosion si tu dévégétalises, si tu enlèves la couverture végétale. Par exemple pour l'extraction minière ou pour faire des constructions, tu vas fragiliser le sol. Dès qu'il y a une grosse pluie, toute la terre en fait va être charriée vers les rivières et tout arrive à la mer.
If precautions are not taken, once there is a heavy rainfall, the earth will be carried off to the rivers and the sea. A phenomenon of sedimentation will thus occur. The tons of earth which will spill into the sea will cover the coral. Much of the coral will suffocate. But there's worse. In a few months, this nickel mine will be spilling potentially toxic products into the lagoon. The lagoon's defenders have signalled the alert. They fear major pollution. Every week, the Living Coral Society activists do a tour of the building site. Powerless and indignant, they've discovered certain machines which rake up everything in their path. This morning, Marina and her friends are checking the setting up of the pipelines which discharge the polluting waste just a few kilometres from the marine reserve which the public powers want to protect.
Le tuyau va passer par ici, voilà, qui va se terminer ici avec un diffuseur.
On n'a même pas le droit d'y mettre les pieds, et bien c'est précisément là que le gros tuyau va déverser son jus.
À quoi ça sert de mettre une réserve si à côté de ça on vous fout des rejets toxiques à plus en finir, quoi.
Marina, president of the Living Coral Society, is floored by what's been going on for the last few months on her little island. Her childhood lagoon is being killed.
Moi j'ai passé toute mon enfance à venir ici, pique-niquer, camper, jouer avec mes frères et mes sœurs. Et là, il y a 100 hectares de mon enfance qui part en fumée. Franchement, c'est quelque chose qui me fait mal au ventre parce qu'on est en train de détruire, on est en train de dénaturer ce pays.
But nickel is New Caledonia's main natural resource. The French state has injected nearly 250 million euros into this factory, so it may be working by 2008. So Marina has chosen to carry on her struggle in another field.
Je me bats pour inscrire la barrière de corail au patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO parce que moi, ce qui m'anime, c'est de garder tout ce trésor de biodiversité que j'ai connu et qui est peut-être en train de nous filer sous les mains.
Meanwhile, Pascal Chabonnet has undertaken to make the future generations aware of coral preservation. To do so, she takes them to the place itself.
Donc on les emmène au plongée Pour voir le milieu, on a parlé de choses, de corail, de polypes, de tas de petites choses.
Ils sont vivants.
Voilà.
Ils sont vivants.
Tout à fait. Je pense qu'une fois qu'on voit ça, une fois qu'on voit cet écosystème absolument magnifique, magique, tous ces poissons de partout, et on a envie de le protéger, quoi. C'est quelque chose de plus réaliste. Juste voir des yeux d'enfants écarquillés à regarder tout ça et à être étonnés, c'est tout bénef, quoi. Après, les enfants font leur petit chemin de leur côté, ils le protégeront naturellement et tout se fera tout seul. On n'a plus besoin d'être là, quoi. C'est pas parce que quelque chose est beau et que quelque chose va bien qu'il faut pas s'en occuper. C'est souvent plus difficile de restaurer, plus difficile de remettre en état que de s'occuper en fait de cette barrière tant qu'elle est encore en bonne santé.
Are we condemned to choose between nickel and coral, between industrial development and protection of the environment? This is a false dilemma. We can have both on one condition: by arguing in terms of sustainable development, by favouring non-polluting industrial procedures. Perhaps a little more costly in the short term, but a sure bet for the future.
So we're flying over Normandy, over the Cotentin Peninsula, and what I love here are all the little copses and hedges, something which has completely disappeared in France, because with land consolidation, lots of hedges were cut down. Although hedges are very important for biodiversity and make for beautiful countryside too. 70% of hedges were cut down between 1960 and 1980 to make the fields bigger. Those are the windmills. Quite sincerely, I don't find them ugly. I know there's a great debate about should we put windmills everywhere or not. We shouldn't put them everywhere. They need to be accepted by the people who live nearby. But in any case, I don't find them ugly. Or in any case, no uglier than pylons. We're still in Normandy, and now I'm taking you into the jungle, and you'll see it's amazing. Yes, I did say the jungle. And I'm also going to tell you about the marine water current, the Gulf Stream. Guillaume, it's incredible here. I've just seen ferns from the primary forest in New Zealand. I've seen palm trees from China, plants from Costa Rica. This is an incredible garden.
Oui, il s'appelle le jardin du voyageur parce que justement les plantes viennent du monde entier. Mais enfin, elles viennent du monde entier, on essaye de les faire pousser. Et si ça pousse, en fait, c'est grâce à la mer et grâce à notre position si proche de l'eau. Alors, c'est la dérive nord-atlantique du Gulf Stream qui nous permet ça. Le Gulf Stream, donc le courant chaud, arrive, il vient se heurter un peu sur l'Irlande et puis descendre vers le nord et venir réchauffer toute la côte ouest du Cotentin. Et nous sommes les premiers dans la baie de Vauville à pouvoir bénéficier de cet effet modérateur de ce courant extraordinaire qui va nous faire une température qui descend rarement en dessous de 2 degrés en hiver, en dessous de 0, et rarement au-dessus de 28, 29 en été.
The European coastline benefits from an exceptional mildness. Just think that on the same latitude as Bordeaux, Montreal in Canada has temperatures which go down to -40 in winter. The mechanism of the Gulf Stream is like a conveyor belt. Arriving from the Arctic Ocean, the warm water from the tropics cools down and fills with salt. Weighed down, it dives to the deeps, and the cycle starts off its round again. All these plants come from the southern hemisphere?
La plupart des plantes viennent de l'hémisphère sud et bien souvent d'îles aussi, parce que tous les feuillages persistants sont généralement très présents dans les îles et surtout ce qui m'intéresse c'est que ce sont des plantes qui n'ont pas été mélangées avec d'autres. Donc il n'y a pas tellement d'hybrides, on a des plantes authentiques qui arrivent à s'adapter ici en Normandie.
How many plants are here?
Il y a plus de 900 espèces différentes et entre 25 et 30 000 plantes, on compte pas. C'est quand on plante, on compte pas. Faut pas.
But beware, the Gulf Stream is not eternal. It could stop. The mechanism of the Gulf Stream jammed at the end of the last glaciation about 12,000 years ago, when one of the great Canadian lakes flowed into the North Atlantic. Within a dozen years, the warming of the water provoked a new, very cold period in Europe, which lasted 1,000 years. Then the Gulf Stream set off again. But with global warming as it is today, Greenland is melting 3 times faster than 10 years ago. This enormous supply of warm water could jam the mechanism and stop the Gulf Stream once more. In such a case, Europe would lose 1 to 5 degrees. It's incredible to think that global warming of the planet could also bring us cold weather. But climate change could take a new victim. After having been nearly exterminated by man, whales are suffering from global warming.
Right whales, blue whales, humpback whales. There are at least 13 species of whale. 7 are threatened with extinction. In 50 years between 1925 and 1975, 1.5 million whales were killed. Despite a moratorium on hunting in force since 1986, Japan, Norway and Iceland continue to hunt the biggest of all mammals. 25,000 whales were captured in 20 years. For no valid reason, since their meat is now only sold as a luxury food product. Which, moreover, is damaging to health, as the flesh is highly concentrated in toxic substances, as the whales live in polluted seas. But the biggest threat to the whale's survival is global warming. Within a dozen years, it could contribute to their starvation. For whales mainly feed on this tiny crustacean, krill, which only lives in extremely cold waters. If krill disappears, the whale disappears too. In fact, the disappearance of the ice floe is an obstacle to the reproduction of krill. And that's not all. The carbon gases discharged into the atmosphere by man increases the average acidity of the oceans, which is also fatal to some of the plankton on which the whales feed. In less than 50 years, if nothing is done, many whales will quite simply die of hunger. But nature still gives man credit. In the great oceans, the mating rituals still go on. After having acquired enormous reserves of fat in the cold waters, the right whale sets off on a long journey which will take him to the warm waters of the tropics. She will go lower and then couple. Beforehand, she must cover thousands of kilometers to reach her goal without losing direction. Whales are excellent navigators. Their skin sensitivity to warm or cold currents guides them to the mating ground. The problem is that today the warming of the water muddles up the sea currents. Despite that, this whale has ended up finding her partner. This is exceptional footage. 2 right whales mating, and for most of the time it takes place at the surface. In spite of her 50 tons, the female lies on her back to receive the male's sex. A 1.5 meter long penis, which the male directs as well as he can over the waves. Not easy when a heavy swell breaks over the flanks of his partner. This nuptial dance could last for several hours, whilst the mating itself lasts only a few seconds or a few minutes. These 2 partners found each other to ensure their lineage, but with a baby every 3 to 5 years, the survival of the species is not guaranteed. Today, there are only 350 right whales left in the North Atlantic. After industrial hunting, more and more frequent collisions with ships and the sometimes fatal nets of the fishermen, it's now global warming that is threatening the whale. Will the giants of the sea end up disappearing? Possibly, if man doesn't weigh up what he inflicts upon the oceans and its inhabitants.
I would like to show you now the Chausey archipelago between Brittany and Normandy, to observe a unique and fascinating phenomenon, the highest tides in Europe. You will see the landscape change completely. Here, there are no natural or man-made structures to hold back the tide. This is why the archipelago still has such a wealth of marine species. Chausey is still magical.
C'est extraordinaire aujourd'hui.
Pour une grande marée, on a un temps extraordinaire.
Il y a un paquet de bateaux.
Loads of boats. They say that 1,000 boats will come here today. That's incredible.
L'armada, c'est vrai que c'est un jour extraordinaire pour les pêcheurs à pied.
How many people will come here today? Nearly 3,000-4,000 people? That's a lot of people, isn't it? Sylvain Giron, hello. You are an oceanographer. You're a sea specialist. You work in Brest. Here, this is incredible. There's a 13-meter tide. So how did the tides work?
Alors les marées sont dues à l'attraction de la Lune et du Soleil. Et le responsable de cette attraction, c'est la force de gravité, la même qui nous maintient à la surface de la Terre, qui nous maintient les deux pieds dessus. Donc la Lune va attirer la surface de la Terre, va attirer donc l'océan vers elle et va former un bourrelet.
Why do you call that a roll?
Alors c'est un bourrelet parce que la surface de l'eau va se déformer par l'attraction de la Lune qui va
une grande vague.
Like a great wave.
Oui, on peut dire que c'est une grande vague. Par contre, de l'autre côté, il y a aussi un bourrelet. Et ce bourrelet, il s'explique parce que la Terre tourne en même temps que la Lune.
A bit like when you swirl water in a basin, the water will tend to, because of centrifugal force, to plaster itself to the sides of the basin. Is it a little like that? So obviously, as the Earth turns around in 24 hours, twice a day, we have a high tide, and twice a day, a low tide. But that's not all. When the sun is in line with the moon, the attraction of the sun and the moon add up. This is what's happening today. It's what we call a spring tide. The tides have an incredible strength, an energy which is completely sustainable and renewable. So why don't we make more use of them?
Alors on s'en est servi dans des zones vraiment particulières comme le barrage de la Rance, pas loin d'ici. Il y a des projets en ce moment qui vont voir le jour, on pense, donc essayer de mettre des éoliennes sous la mer pour pouvoir récupérer ce courant. On pense qu'on pourrait subvenir à l'énergie de la Bretagne en mettant des hydroliennes sur la côte bretonne et jusqu'en Normandie.
By placing hydromills against the current, in other words, hydromills in the sea, we could transform the tremendous energy of the tide into electricity. As with windmills and solar power, the sea is a renewable energy. A part of our electrical current tomorrow could be supplied in this way. Let's leave Chausey and head south to the Mont Saint-Michel. Here, on the other hand, the development of the bay of the last century has disrupted the ecosystem and threatens the site. It's still magical to arrive like this in front of the Mont Saint-Michel with this enormous stretch of sand during the spring tide. It's really magnificent. They say the tide comes in at the speed of a galloping horse. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly impressive. The Mont Saint-Michel is the third most visited place in France. Yet this marvel of nature and the work of man was losing its identity. For years, man did everything he could to attach the mount to the land. Today, they want the opposite, for the mount to become an island again. 3 million people visit the Mont Saint-Michel every year, which is on UNESCO's Worldwide Heritage List and is an exceptional site. There is a project to close the car park in order to dredge the sand around the Mont Saint-Michel, to give it back its maritime feel, and so it may become an island again. And you will see, man has given himself the means to achieve this ambition. I'm with François-Xavier de Bolincourt. He grew up here, he's an engineer, and thanks to him, the Mont Saint-Michel will become an island again. How are you going to do this?
Les études montrent que si on ne fait rien, le continent touchera le monument en 2042. Alors,
2042?
Oui, c'est très précis, comme les scientifiques savent le faire. Ce qu'il faut retenir, c'est que c'est demain matin. Le phénomène d'ensablement de la baie du Mont-Saint-Michel est un phénomène naturel. Toutes les baies du monde se remplissent parce que mécaniquement, les courants à marée montante sont plus puissants qu'à marée descendante. Entre les deux, il y a des sédiments qui ont le temps de se reposer et ils ne repartent pas avec la marée descendante. Donc à la base, on est sur un phénomène naturel. Il se trouve que, justement, dans le périmètre du mont, la main de l'homme a accéléré le processus d'ensablement gravement.
Alors, en quoi consiste
So what does the work consist of?
Les travaux consistent à créer un barrage qui va être la machine qui va aider à repousser les sédiments plus loin dans la baie. Ce barrage laisse rentrer l'eau de mer et il prolongera à marée descendante l'effet mécanique de la marée naturelle. Et pour cela, il faut aussi casser l'ouvrage d'arrivée actuel et il se terminera le nouveau par un ouvrage sur pilotis et au-dessous duquel on verra le Couesnon à marée basse et la mer à marée haute.
With this project, water will at last be able to flow freely around the mount. The force of the Couesnon River, combined with that of the tide, should chase the sediment beyond the Mont Saint-Michel rock. If man does all this, it's not just to make things pretty, but quite simply so that nature gets her rights back. Perhaps the mentality is starting to change. For me, doing an inventory of places on Earth doesn't just mean taking nature photos, but also taking photos of the marvels built by man, such as the Mont Saint-Michel. Seen from the sky, towns make up a part of nature, just as an anthill makes up part of the forest. When I see Venice, what strikes me is how the water outlines its contours, emphasizing its beauty. Those who built the town on a lagoon over 1,000 years ago could never imagine that other men would one day endanger it. Here, too, the major development work in the 20th century has disrupted the environment.
Venice, in total 118 little islands linked together by hundreds of canals and bridges. To establish and extend their city, the Venetians dried out land, dug canals, deviated rivers. But today, the foundations of the stone and marble town are sinking into the marsh mud. The lagoon is also in danger because the water is rising inexorably. Descending from a grand Venetian family, architect and historian Antonio Foscari is fighting to save Venice.
Vous voyagez dans un canal comme on fait maintenant et vous voyez des portes. Vous voyez que toutes les marches, même des bâtiments du XVIIIe siècle, sont immergées par un mètre d'eau. Regardez-moi maintenant, on est vraiment entre nous. Regardez les marches. Où elles sont les marches, là? Là-bas. Et elles sont tous avec des algues vertes parce que elles sont chaque jour trempées dans l'eau. Le niveau du sol de la lagune s'est baissé et ça est une partie du problème et surtout parce que la mer a monté.
Every year, the town's streets and squares disappear for more than 50 days underwater. Since the beginning of the 20th century, this phenomenon known as aqua alta has not ceased increasing. The question today is, what if Venice stayed submerged? In order to save Venice from the water, the big international organizations led by UNESCO have looked for a solution. This is the Moses Project. The idea is to regulate the water level by building a system of mobile dams at the 3 entries to the lagoon. They would only work 3 to 5 times a year to block the spring tides, judged responsible for the floods. This pharaoh-like project, which should be accomplished by 2013, has divided the scientific community and a majority of the Venetians. As for Antonio Foscari, he doesn't want to hear about it.
S'il continue à dépenser une telle quantité d'argent dans une direction qui est probablement la fausse direction, c'est très difficile d'arrêter un train quand il est en marche. Donc pourquoi trouver une solution qui dure 10 jours si on a un problème 350 jours?
In fact, the floods are only part of the problem. Venice is also a victim of its own success, an average of 40,000 tourists a day. Suddenly, the freshwater requirements exploded. Because of pumping up the groundwater, the land that was no longer sustained by the underground waters sank 20 centimetres in less than 30 years. Moreover, maritime traffic needs developed and real marine highways were built. The coming and going of cruise ships and taxi boats have greatly contributed to the erosion of the building's foundations. The walls are becoming permeable. Water gets into the stone, channeling cracks that threaten the facades of the palazzos. All of the town's foundations are affected.
Je ne vois pas pourquoi il faut faire des discussions théoriques ou des commissions d'études pour voir ce que tout le monde voit. Vous le voyez.
And the city is sinking. In order to find out just how much the historic heart of Venice is threatened, you need to go around the immense lagoon. Like Venice, dozens of little inhabited islands are threatened by the sea. In the 60s, the region saw unusual economic and industrial development. And here, right at the end of the lagoon, is where the port of Marghera was established, the leading chemical hub in Europe. Leading polluter of the lagoon too. So that the oil tankers may berth off the port of Marghera, they dug an oil canal right in the heart of the lagoon. A channel 12 kilometers long and more than 18 meters deep. It allows the supertankers to pass as far from Venice as possible, but undermines the center of the lagoon.
Perché qui si fanno entrare anche quelle, però non c'è, non le vogliono far vedere a Venezia. Allora si è costruito un approdo di stanche, comunque le fanno entrare qui dentro questa darsena e qui fanno praticamente da qui scaricano il petrolio e lo mandano a Marghera.
For the fishermen of the Isle of Palestrina, the situation is catastrophic. The waves stirred up by the cargo ships destroy these strips of land that used to put the brake on the tide's advance and limit the importance of the floods.
In tutte le cartografie marittime qui risulta terraferma. Qui risulta terraferma, risulta casse colmate, barene. Invece nell'arco di 30 anni questa zona qua col passaggio, con l'escavo del canale e il passaggio delle petroliere, praticamente qui si sono abbassati tanto da portare addirittura a 2 metri di profondità.
Result: the water is winning its battle against Venice and its lagoon. For Antonio Foscari, it's perhaps too late.
Dans ces 30 ans, la lagune a perdu 120 millions de mètres cubes de matériaux lagunaires. C'est-à-dire qu'ils sont disparus à peu près 120 km² de marée. Ils se sont transformés dans une mer ouverte.
20% of the land is now underwater, a figure which sums up the tragedy the city is currently undergoing. Today, existing projects, whilst they may not be perfect like the Moses project, offer the city some respite. But for how long? As the waters rise due to global warming, Venice could one day be completely submerged. We need to act now before the situation is beyond repair.
I have flown over many places in the world, but every time I come back here to New Caledonia, I get a shock of beauty. And I can understand why France has asked for the lagoon and the coral reefs to be put on the worldwide heritage list. New Caledonia is surrounded by the biggest lagoon in the world, 24,000 square kilometers, protected by a coral reef. At the end of the day, all the work I do on the earth, seen from the sky, is like being given a gift. Look what I'm being given right now, and I'm here to show it to you. This is the first time I've seen this. The coral is blackened, grilled by the sun. It's probably been like that for centuries. Including the overseas territories, our country owns 10% of the coral reefs and 20% of the atolls on the planet. That's a responsibility. Here we are on Pine Island. They're beautiful, these great pine columns, which gave the island its name. And now I'm going up to the north of the island. we're flying over the mangrove swamps. The mangrove swamp is a genuine forest which grows on the sea. In the ocean's life cycle, this forest is fundamental. It's a nursery. Among the mangrove roots, many species of fish and crustaceans are born and grow here, sheltered from predators. When they are adult, they will migrate to the coral reefs. In the tropics, the mangrove swamps take up a quarter of the coastline. They act as a shield against storms and tsunamis. But in 1 century, man has cut down 50% of the mangrove swamps on the planet. He's destroying the nursery. To end this program about the sea, I wanted to come here. We're in the heart of Vaud. For me, this is a very important, symbolic place, because it kind of represents all my work on the Earth, seen from the sky. I took this photo in 1992. Since then, it's been around the world. In the middle of the mangrove swamp, in this green setting, I discovered a heart. I've often been asked if it was faked, but no. The heart area is dry, nearly yellow, because during some years, water doesn't reach it, which is a natural phenomenon. Today, the water has returned, the clearing has disappeared, it's much less spectacular. In the beginning, I was disappointed, and then I realized that the heart was beating in time with the planet. For man to last, he has to understand that it is for him to adapt to this rhythm. There's no other way out. Looking at this heart that nature has drawn for us, I think of the words of Theodore Monod. We have tried everything except love. Goodbye. For this love of the sea and the men and the women who share it with us. Thanks to Christian Boucher, who reminded us that the sea has the right answers to tomorrow's problems. Thanks to Paul Watson, the ecology pirate, the irrepressible protector of sea animal. I would like to thank Jean-Michel Coulioli, who is fighting in Corsica to preserve the incredible variety found in Bonifacio's Marine Park. Thanks to Nicolas Maelis, who alerted us to depletion of marine resources in Corsica. Thanks to Felipe Cardozo, who is fighting against overfishing in the Bijagos archipelago. Thanks to Denis Charvoz, who explained fish farming to us. Thanks to François Seurat of the LPO, which protects marine birds on the Brittany coast. Thanks to Gilles Huet, who shared with us his fight against the green algae. A very special thanks to Joseph Cabaret, the farmer who had the courage to change his working methods to protect the sea from pollution from the land. Thanks to Guillaume Pellerin for making us aware of how much we owe to the great marine currents. Thanks to Pascal Chabanet for making children aware of the dangers that threaten coral. Thanks to Sylvain Giron, who explained the phenomenon of the tides to us. Thanks to François-Xavier de Bolincourt, so that the Mont Saint-Michel may stay an island. Thanks to all those who love the sea. As with all our other programs in the series, this program is carbon compensated. What does that mean? To make our reports, between the helicopter flights and the plane journeys, we have discharged into the atmosphere 111 tons of carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas which contributes to global warming. In total, this is what 13 French people a year discharge. To be in accordance with our convictions, we have decided to compensate this pollution by taking part in the Carbon Action Project with ADEME. This means actively helping a French NGO, Gevalor, who work in Madagascar in the Mahajanga Valley. This project involves collecting the organic waste of the town and making it into compost. In this way, there are no methane gas emissions, a greenhouse gas even more powerful than carbon dioxide. It's also a source of local employment which allows the farmers of the valley to have a natural fertilizer at their disposal. Each year, this means the equivalent of 12,000 tons of carbon dioxide that are not emitted. This helps us fight against global warming. For us, this is essential. the sea. Good evening. As the reserve is protected, many species of bird have settled here, like the gannet, which only came here in 1930. Today, this place has become the biggest bird reserve in the French Sea. So, how many birds are there here?
Alors ce que l'on voit là, c'est des fous de bassin, et il y en a exactement cette année 18 698 couples.
How did you count them?
Alors on les compte en faisant d'abord une photographie aérienne, et sur ces photographies, ces oiseaux blancs apparaissent très bien comme des petits points, et on compte tous ces petits points. Et donc cette année, il y en avait 18 698, sachant qu'un petit point blanc, c'est un adulte qui est posé sur son nid.
Once gannets mate, it's for life. And every year, it's the same ritual. The gannets come back to their colony around February. The male struts about. They mate, and the female lays a single egg, which she will sit on for 40 days. The young gannet hatches around June, and for the next 12 weeks, it's nursery time. The parents feed their young.
Crab is devastating everything in its path. This is what happens when man disrespects the delicate balance of nature. In Brittany, on the Armour coast, green algae has invaded the beaches. Who's responsible and how to get rid of them? In New Caledonia, the coral reef is threatened by the construction of a nickel mine. And at the very moment, it's going to be entered on the Worldwide Heritage List.
Franchement, c'est quelque chose qui me fait mal au ventre parce qu'on est en train de détruire cela, on est en train de dénaturer ce pays.
In less than 40 years, Venice may disappear underwater. On the other hand, the Mont Saint-Michel may no longer be an island. We'll see what man is doing to protect these two sites, which belong to our worldwide heritage.
The intervention of man can also mean new opportunities for some species. We're just off Perros-Guirec in Brittany. This is one of the rare places in France where you can see grey seals. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. 70% of the oxygen going into your lungs comes from the sea. This oxygen is produced by billions of microscopic algae living on the ocean's surface. When astronauts saw the Earth from space for the first time, they were surprised to find it so blue. But this is normal, given that the sea covers 72% of our planet's surface. The sea's resources may seem inexhaustible to us, but they are not. It's being emptied of its fish, being treated like a waste bin. The damage we are inflicting on the sea will be irreversible if we don't act now. This is an emergency. We are reaching the point of no return. During this program, I will take you on a magnificent, but as you'll come to understand, also worrying journey. We are in Corsica, in a Genoese tower. There are 90 towers like this built to protect the island from invasion. Due to its overseas territories, France has the world's second largest maritime force, just behind the United States, which is why we decided to film this program in France. We have started here because I believe Corsica has the most beautiful and well-protected coastline in Europe. But the trip you are about to take will take you around the world, because the problem with the sea is global. Look.
In the Galapagos, a portrait of Paul Watson. For 40 years, this Canadian and hero of the protection of marine species has not stopped battling.
So if you're going after pirates, it's best to be a pirate.
By pillaging the oceans, we are devastating environments we know little about. In the abyssal zone, at more than 5,000 meters below the surface, discover an amazing menagerie. 7 islands off the Brittany coast. We filmed the largest colony of seabirds in France. In this reserve, nearly 18,000 pairs of gannets have made their nest. Norway, a giant